I'm sure many of you heard about the tragic stories that occurred over the weekend. One in El Paso, Texas, the other in Dayton, Ohio. Two mass shootings. Some specifics about the shooting in El Paso. Two more people have died from Saturday's mass shooting at the Walmart in El Paso, raising that death toll in that attack to 22. El Paso police said both victims died on Monday, and the police department said on Twitter one victim died early this morning at a hospital, and another died just after 10 in the morning, and 24 other people were wounded in the attack. Now, the suspected gunman, 21-year-old Patrick Cruces, has been booked on a capital murder charge and is being held without bond, according to the El Paso County DA's office, and a law enforcement source said investigators were putting together a timeline of Cruces' movements, and that's according to a CBS News report. And on the phone with me for a few minutes, I've got Dr. Dr Carmen. He is an associate dean and professor in the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth. And Dr. Carmen, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you today?
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. You look at some of the events from over the weekend. Just horrific, to say the very least. What are some of your initial thoughts when you first heard about the shootings in El Paso and in Ohio? What crossed your mind?
Sadly for people in my field, this is not a shocker. I wasn't really shocked. I was saddened, like the rest of America is, but I'm not shocked. Unfortunately, we expect these things to happen from time to time, and now it's happened more often than ever before, right? So we're having people that are radicalizing throughout the United States and taking it on themselves to simply eliminate either a certain group of people or, in this case, a certain ethnicity. It really is sad for the rest of us.
How does law enforcement investigate these kind of crimes that occurred? They are, I'm sure, going to be looking at forensic evidence, maybe gathering witness statements and things like that, maybe trying to put together a timeline for the suspects that are involved in these cases. This is going to be a very methodical process, isn't it? What's your vantage point there?
Absolutely, and this is going to take a long time to be able to piece it together. I know that people throughout the world are really eager to find out, the motives behind both of the killings. But at the end of the day, it really has to do with, how slow the investigation is going to be, right? So we all have to be very patient. The FBI is involved. They're likely taking this case apart in the sense that they're ensuring that they go through the database of all the computers, phones, social postings, people that they knew, the manifesto in the case of the El Paso shooter. Because he is alive, there is that benefit as well that they can actually ask him questions and get into his brain. So this will take a long time to piece it all together, but eventually we are going to know essentially everything that led them up to the point of the shooting and even the angles in which they actually shot the victims.
Would you also look at this, too, as far as the amount of resources that are being deployed by law enforcement? It's tremendous when you look at the volume and the amount of money being put into this, but it seems like we're hearing more and more shootings almost on a daily basis. Is law enforcement operating from a disadvantage in your estimation because these crimes are so unpredictable?
There's no question, right? So a lot of these folks leave that what we call in the industry their signature, which is essentially evidence that they leave behind in social media, right? So many of them, they sort of build themselves up to that moment before they actually execute the attack. And so they'll leave postings on Facebook, they'll do something on Twitter. And so, oftentimes, and today has been no exception, a lot of the media organizations that interview me, they ask me the question, well, how would the FBI know? It's very difficult for law enforcement to be able to identify who these individuals are before the attacks. And the reason for that is because thousands, if not millions of people are posting things that they shouldn't post on social media on a daily basis. So how do you distinguish those that are just simply making a comment from those that are actually trying to inflict harm on others?
I also, too, have heard from some folks that have told me that they just don't want to go out, that they want to be maybe isolated, stay in their home or their apartment because they're just not sure what kind of situation they may run across eventually. What would you say to that about folks that are becoming more isolated or try to remove themselves from the mainstream. What are your thoughts?
From a statistical perspective, the chances of these events happening to any of us are pretty small, right? So this happens, and it happens now. It seems to be happening more often than ever before, particularly because we have the media, the rapid, deployment of information through a cell phone and television and cable and whatnot. But at the same time, these events have happened throughout history, maybe not at the level that they are now, but it is very common. It's a natural phenomenon for people to simply not want to go out of their homes. But at the end of the day, we can't give in to terror. Kind of the same thing that President Bush said back in 2001 when we had 9/11, and he said the best thing that all of you can do, being true Americans, is to get on a plane and fly. Well, I would tell your audience the same, right? We have to live our lives every single day the way we lived them a couple of days ago, but we have to be vigilant. We also have to make sure that our guard is not down and to be situationally aware of what's around you all the time, because if this does happen, if you are among those that are unfortunate that this event happens in the course of their lives, you've got to know what to do when these events take place.
All right, sir, I know your time is precious, and I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. And where can folks find you up on the web? Go to maybe the Tarleton State University website. What's the best recommendation?
Right, so they can go to the Tarleton, tarleton.edu, and look for criminal justice. I'm listed there. But then you can also find that there are, in the local communities, you can find information on what to do, how to prepare yourself for these events, what to do in those circumstances, how to be able to evade contact with the suspects. And unfortunately, for a lot of these people, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time to no fault of their own. And we just simply have to be vigilant, right? And be aware of what surrounds us all the time.
Okay, very good. Doctor, thank you, sir, for spending a few minutes. And again, that is Dr. Alex Del Carmen, Associate Dean and Professor in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University.